members, Deputy Minister. We're just waiting for some members to log on. Once they logged on, we'll then start with the meeting.
Okay, what's it? Hello, comrade.
Comrade the Devil, Honorable the Devil. No, welcome. We're just waiting for 1-2 members before we start.
Yes, because I hear all of you are quiet. Then I've just logged in.
Hello, China. Hello,
How
China.
are you? Let me see. And I'm driving.
Yeah, uska hlaya ko TV na kika koloing a ke hlahi.
Hey, I can think about this I'm driving.
Okay, lina kika koloing. Sheba nna. Wa bona. Kika koloing.
O ntse le motle go.
Ke ntse ke le motle.
Ah,
Shapo.
Peter and Mtetwa?
I'm busy with them right now, Chairperson.
Okay, just let us know as soon as they join us so we can take stock of who's in the meeting. Thanks. Discussion?
Yes, Chairperson.
Fayel as well is struggling to log in. Could you just follow him up as well?
Will do. Will do. what the problem is, Chair. ICT is assisting. We resent the link, but some members are still not able to access it. We're just going to try continue trying from our side.
They're saying that they're waiting to be let into the meeting.
Okay, I'll chat with ICT now to find out.
Honorable Mteta? Gershwin? Gershwin? Can you maybe just get Isis to assist Honorable Nita? I see Honorable Mteto has joined us. Honorable Zandamela has joined us as well. Maybe we should start with this meeting if you can give an indication in terms of who's present.
Chairperson, we have Honorable Michalakis. Honorable Dango tendered an apology. We have Honorable Mola, Honorable Zandamela, Honorable Dodovu, and Honorable Seleku.
Honorable Mtetwa was with us. He's with us.
Yes. Sorry, he's with us now, Chairperson.
Okay, so we do correct.
Yes, Chairperson.
Okay. Can you please just assist Honorable Nita so she's able to connect as well? It seems she's having a bit of difficulty, but maybe let me just start with the meeting so we can deal with some of the formalities. Our members, welcome, and my apology for starting the meeting late, but I tried to keep you abreast in terms of what was going on. We seem to occasionally have technical glitches, especially in terms of members logging onto the system. I think you'll also understand that some of us are using different devices, and we use this platform on one device, we receive emails on another. But anyway, be that as it may, I'm just glad we're able to correct. A special welcome to the Deputy Minister. Deputy Minister, from your side, do you have any officials with you? Maybe if you could just indicate who is present from the side of the department.
Thanks, Chair. I've seen Ms. Teresa Ross is present. I think she will be doing the presentation on the Judicial Matters Amendment Bill.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Minister, and also welcome to Teresa to this meeting. On members, we have quite a few items in terms of the program, but the initial item relates to the briefing by the Ministry of Justice and Correctional Services on the Judicial Matters Amendment Bill. So, honourable members, in terms of the first item on the agenda, we will receive a presentation, and members will be allowed to deliberate on the Judicial Matters Amendment Bill. Perhaps because we've started late, Deputy Minister, let me hand over to you so you can just take us through the details of the bill, and then members will be allowed to then engage you on the matter. Deputy Minister. Oh, and one more thing, Deputy Minister, if you have a presentation, I'm not sure if it will be loaded on from your side, or do you expect Gershwin to load it on this side? Please also give us a presentation. Thanks.
Look, I think, thanks, Chairperson. Good afternoon, everybody. I think that Ms. Ross will be doing the presentation, so I'm not sure if she will be loading it from her side, or it was sent to the committee, whether she wants it to be done from the side of Gershwin. Just to say that maybe by way of introduction, well, actually, look, no, it's in the it's in the slide presentation. So if I can hand over to Ms. Ross, I'll maybe come back at the end.
Okay, Ms. Ross. Are you going to be able to show us the presentation, or should we get Gershwin to do that for you?
Gershwin should rather upload it, because we've been trying that from our side and it was not working out.
Okay. Gershwin, could you kindly assist?
Will do, Chairperson. Sorry, just hold on, Chair. Let me just get it. I'm sorry, Chair. Are you able to see that?
Yes, we are. Oh, I am. Ms. Ross? Ms. Ross? Teresa?
Thank you, Chair. Chair and Deputy Minister, I'm with Ms. Virginia Litswalo, who will be doing the presentation with me. So I'll, without further ado, hand over to her.
Thank you, Chair and DM. Just a bit of background. The aim of this bill is to amend 2 acts administered by the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development by addressing technical issues and issues that arose in the practical application of these acts. Now, the bill amends Section 7.
Members, can I request that you mute your mics, please? Continue, please.
The bill amends Section 7.3 of the Divorce Act and Section 12.6 of the National Prosecuting Authority Act in order to give effect to the judgments of the Constitutional Court, where the court ordered that remedial legislation be put in place. Okay, clause 1. Clause 1 is intended to amend Section 7.3 of the Divorce Act in order to give effect to the judgment of the Constitutional Court in Holomisa versus Holomisa, where Section 7.3 was declared constitutionally invalid. Now, Section 7.3 of the Divorce Act empowers the court granting a decree of divorce in respect of a marriage out of property to order a just and equitable redistribution of assets, taking into consideration the contribution, whether in or otherwise, of the parties to the marriage. The challenge with Section 7.3 is that it only covers persons married out of community of property before the commencement of the Matrimonial Property Act of 1984, where there is an antenuptial contract in place which excluded community of property, profit and loss, and accrual. And it also covers Africans married out of community of property in terms of Section 22(6) of the repealed Black Administration Act before the commencement of the Marriage Matrimonial Property Law Amendment Act of 1988. So effectively, Section 7.3 excludes persons married out of community of property under the repealed Transkei Marriage Act of 1978. The next slide. Section 39 of the Transkei Marriage Act provided that a civil marriage was not in community of property unless parties intending to get married a joint declaration before a competent official that they intended their marriage to be in community of property. Now, while Section 7.3 of the Divorce Act brought relief to persons married out of community of property before the commencement of the Matrimonial Property Act of 1984 and the Marriage and Matrimonial Property Law Amendment Act of 1988, respectively, persons in the former Transkei who were in the same predicament could not realize this benefit. The situation was, however, turned around by the enactment of the Recognition of Customary Marriages Act of 1998. Moving to the next slide, that is slide number 6. The Constitutional Court found that Section 7.3 of the Divorce Act discriminates against women married out of community of property under the Transkei Marriage Act, in that it excludes them from the benefits of a possible just and equitable transfer of assets on divorce, and therefore fails the test of rationality under Section 9(1) of the Constitution, which provides for equal protection and benefit of the law. Now, Clause 1 of the bill amends Section
sorry, ma'am.
by extending its protection.
Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to sort some logistical issues. Gershon, I think Honorable Mikalakis is unable to see the presentation. So if IT can just address that. And Honorable Mfayela is waiting to be let into the meeting. So if somebody can attend to that too. You may continue with the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Clause 1. By extending its protection and benefits to marriages out of community of property entered into in terms of any law applicable in a former homeland where no antemutual contract or any other agreement was entered into in terms of that applicable law. Moving to slide number 7, which now speaks to Clause 2 of the bill. Now, this clause aims to amend Section 12(4) of the National Prosecuting Authority Act. Section 12(1) of the NPA Act provides that the National Director of Public Prosecutions and a Deputy National Director hold office for a non-renewable term of 10 years and must vacate office at the age of 65 years. Section 12.4, on the other hand, empowers the President to extend the term of office of the NDPP or a DPP beyond the age of 65 by a period of up to 2 years. Now, in the Corruption Watch case, the court declared Section 12.4 constitutionally invalid in that it undermines and compromises the independence of the office of the NDPP. Moving to slide 8. The Constitutional Court also declared Section 12.6 of the NPA Act constitutionally invalid to the extent that it permits the President to suspend the NDPP or a DPP for an indefinite period and without pay. Now, therefore, the amendments in Clause 2 of the bill are intended to do away with the powers of the President to extend the term of office of the NDPP or a Deputy National Director. Secondly, to provide the period of suspension of the NDPP or a DPP may not exceed 12 months. And lastly, to provide that the NDPP or a DPP who is on suspension be entitled to their salary during the suspension period. Moving to the last slide, slide number 9. The Constitutional Court in these two cases referred to above ordered that the amendments in Clause 1 be in operation by 22 October 2020, while those in Clause 2 must have been in place by 12 February 2020. Thank you. That's the end of the presentation, Chair.
Deputy Minister.
Chair, thanks very much. I think it's sort of fairly straightforward. It's two separate issues. Effectively, the first one was, I think, a omission when the Divorce Act was brought in. You will see that the clause is basically to apply this now to any law applicable in a former homeland without entering into an anti-nuptial contract or agreement in terms of such law. It's actually the Transkei law that is at fault. But the concern was we had, I think it was 9 homelands, all with the right to pass legislation. A lot of that, it was difficult to trace. So the idea was that to make it apply to any law coming from a former homeland, which didn't provide for this. And the default position basically then is a community of property. So that's basically that one. The NPA Act is I think it's all been said. Of interest is I know in the joint meeting discussions, there were questions relating to whether a suspended magistrate should receive their salary. In an earlier constitutional court case, the court had found that that was acceptable to withhold a magistrate's salary, but in this matter, which was more recent, it held that it wasn't correct or wasn't permissible to withhold the salary of the National Director of Public Prosecutions or a Deputy National Director. So that's just from an interest point of view. The passing of this section is late, as you saw from the presentation. It should have been done in February. We did apply. There's 2 other bills which are still, well, they're on the order paper of the National Assembly. We did apply in the one bill for an extension from the Constitutional Court, but the Constitutional Court effectively said that it wasn't really worth giving the extension because there wasn't much there wasn't much difference as to whether it was granted or not. So it's not, as we see it, a problem that this bill hasn't been passed before that deadline. The NPA Act, as I said, is overdue. The Divorce Act provision is still, we've still got till October. Chair, I think let me leave it like that for now and then assist with questions.
Yeah, no, thank you, Deputy Minister, and thank you for bringing in the other element of the timelines. Honourable members, I think the amendments are pretty straightforward, but are there any questions or would members like to deliberate on the presentation? Can I get an indication from members? You may indicate in the chat group, or you may raise your hand, or you may interject. Okay, members, if there's no points for clarity or no question to the department, this is not the end of our engagement on this piece of legislation. We're still going to process the bill, and I'm sure as we continue the process, other matters, if we have issues with, will become clearer. I think on that note, honourable members, let me thank the Deputy Minister and his team for making this presentation to us. Deputy Minister, you're welcome to continue sitting in on our meeting, or if you have, I'm sure you are quite busy, and if you want to leave, you and your staff, I mean, feel free to do so. Deputy Minister.
Thanks very much. The advantage of these home, and thanks for releasing us, the advantage of these virtual meetings is that you can multitask. So I think Ms. Ross can leave if she wants. I'll just leave it on to see the decisions that you're taking on the magistrate, and I think it was and the treaty. But I won't be formally. I'll be keeping an eye on it. That's all. So you don't need to refer to me or anything. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Minister. All members, we're moving on with our agenda. We're going to be dealing with the consideration and adoption of reports. We'll start with the report on the International Treaty on Extradition and Mutual Legal Assistance between the Government of the Republic of South Africa and the Government of the United Mexican States. I will request Gershwin as well, if you could put the report of the committee. Before that, perhaps, honourable members, I think in terms of the treaties, it was presented. The department presented to us on Wednesday in the joint committee with the PC Justice. We received a presentation at the time, and we did, to some extent, engage the department on the presentation regarding both extradition and mutual legal assistance treaties between Mexico and South Africa. And these are also were tabled in terms of section 231, subsection 2 of the Constitution. As indicated in that meeting, we said if members would like to deliberate further on the treaties as a committee, you could do so. But if members are satisfied with the deliberations that took place then please, if you would allow me, I could table the committee report for adoption. Members, if I can get an indication whether you would like to deliberate further, or can we go look at the report for adoption?
Chair.
Honourable Mtetwa?
No, Chair. I think the report is quite clear. May you table it so that we can see how we adopt it.
Okay, thank you, Honourable Mtetwa. Gershwin, if I can request you to project the report. Thanks, honourable members. Given that these are two treaties, we'll have to treat them separately. The first is the report of the Select Committee on Security and Justice on the treaty, and Okay, honourable members. Honourable Nita, I think there's Honourable Nita and Honourable Dodovu would like to speak. Can I get Honourable Nita?
Thanks, Chair. Looking at the treaty, Chair, and the presentation that we have received, I would like to approve the treaty as the member of the committee. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so honourable members, we recommend to the House that the House approves the ratification of the treaty in terms of Section 231, subsection 2 of the Constitution. Honourable Nita has moved.
I second, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Dodovu. Are there any objections?
No objection, Chair.
No objection.
Thank you. And are there any abstentions? I'm also getting messages from my members. I take it that we're adopting the treaty as it relates to extradition between the President and the government of Mexico. Members, the next treaty relates to mutual legal assistance on criminal matters. And once again, tabled in terms of 231 subsection 2 of the Constitution. In terms of the report, as a committee, we recommend that the House approves the ratification of the treaty in terms of section 231 subsection 2 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. Our members, can I get a mover for the report?
I move,
Chairperson. I move,
Honorable
Chairperson.
Can I? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable. Thank you, Honorable Mola. Thank you, Honorable Members. So we've adopted the two treaties. The next item on our agenda relates to the issue of the provisional suspension of Magistrate Mkanzi, who is the regional magistrate in Free State, and this is once again tabled in terms of Section 13, subsection 3B of the Magistrates Act. Our members, the report was sent to you. Once again, we also discussed this. We received quite a comprehensive briefing on Wednesday in the Joint Committee with PC Justice, and I think members will agree that we quite extensively deliberated at that point also on the matter. And if members would allow me once again also to table the report of the committee. The report has also been sent to members, so if I can get...
I move, Chairperson, that the report be adopted.
Okay, in terms of the... Thank you, Honorable Mola. In terms of the recommendation of the committee, we recommend that the National Council of Provinces confirms Mr. L.T. Mkanzi's provisional suspension from the office of magistrate. Honorable Mola has moved. Is there any seconder?
I second as Dodovu, Honorable
Chair. Thank you, Honorable Mola and Honorable Dodovu. Are there any objections and abstentions? Sorry, Honorable members, I'm also trying to look at the chat group. I'm not seeing anybody raising their hands or raising an issue. I take it, Honorable members, that we've adopted this report as well. Honorable members, then if I can move then to the budget reports. The first one is the report of the Select Committee on Security and Justice on the 2020-21 Budget Vote 28. The APP of the Department of Police dated the 29th of May 2020. Honourable members, this is quite a lengthy report. we did try, and you did receive the report because we intended at a previous meeting to adopt, but we deferred the item to another meeting. So we're dealing with the matter today. It's quite a lengthy report. It's 37 pages long. Honourable members, I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at the report, but in essence, on page 1, we have the introduction to the report, and it reflects briefly on the potential impact of COVID-19 on the budget. The report also looks at SAP's strategic focus by reviewing government policy priorities, including the SONA, the NDP, the medium-term strategic framework targets for 2019-2020. That is from page 2 to 5. Pages 5 to 8, the report reviews SAP's strategic priorities. Pages 8 to 18, the report provides a brief overview of the national budget per department and the provincial budget of provincial departments. And then pages 19 to 26 reviews the performance targets of the department, honourable members. I think in terms of the key areas of discussion, honourable members will recall that we were part of that meeting where various issues were raised by members and were responded to by the department. These issues are covered from page 27 to 34. It includes issues like gender-based violence, unemployment and increase in crime, the issue of the 7,000 police trainees, the renewal of firearm licenses, forensic laboratories, the removal of several indicators that, the release of 19,000 inmates from the correctional centers, matters related to the community policing forums, the provincial budgets, high contact crime wait stations, the DPCI. There were quite a few issues that were raised, honourable members, and the department had provided us. And finally, honourable members, from pages 34 to 36, we list recommendations of the committee. There are 13 recommendations. Honourable members, I hope you've been able to go through them so that I don't have to read them now. But if members can indicate whether they have any additions or amendments that they would like to make to this report. If not, if members then would want to move for the adoption of the report.
Chair.
Your mic.
Yes, I wanted to. Okay.
Chair.
Honorable Mtetwa.
I think, Chair, to be proper, let's go quickly through the recommendation because we have gone through the whole report in 96 pages. The only thing that we need to do is just to look at the recommendation, and then we'll move for adoption quickly.
Thank you, Honorable Mtetwa. In terms
unfortunately, I can't see on the slides here. I've been switching on and off to 2 devices. The other one is a network problem.
No, it's understandable, Honorable Mtetwa. Honorable members, our first recommendation is that the interim steering committee of the GBVF briefs the committee and provides a comprehensive update on GBVF cases recorded during the lockdown period to ensure that members receive the correct statistics. Members further recommended that the minister ensures that police officials receive adequate training and that police stations have adequate resources to ensure that domestic violence matters are addressed effectively. Our second recommendation relates to the department's plan to increase police visibility with the Safer Cities program, and we recommended that SAPS ensures the speedy implementation of the Safer Cities technology, as it would go a long way in contributing to the reduction of crime by 2030. Our third recommendation is that while we welcome the multidisciplinary approach being implemented in respect of the release of the 19,000 inmates, we recommend that SAPS ensures it works closely with the Department of Correctional Services to monitor the release of the inmates and to put appropriate mechanisms in place to prevent recidivism. Our fourth recommendation, we recommend that SAPS and the Civilian Secretariat for Police Service ensures that it develops an appropriate budget for CPFs to function effectively, as this will enhance the collaborative working relationship between SAPS and communities to ensure the reduction of crime. SAPS should provide the committee with a detailed breakdown per province of police stations that have functional CPF structures. Our first recommendation relates to appropriate training that should be conducted with SAPS officials to ensure that their behavior is ethical and above reproach at all times when dealing with the public. Members recommended that in the event that SAPS officials are found to have contravened the code of conduct, SAPS leadership should act swiftly to implement disciplinary measures. Our sixth recommendation is that we recommend that both SAPS and IPID conduct follow-ups with the Department of Health to address challenges they may be experiencing in issuing post-mortem reports timelessly. Our seventh recommendation is that the DPCI fast-tracks its recruitment and appointment processes to ensure the necessary skills and capacity are in place to address organized crime effectively. Our eighth recommendation, while we welcome the department's plan to develop a scientific formula which will include variables to determine the different needs of police stations and to ensure the equitable distribution of the budget to all police stations in all provinces, members recommended that the department provide the committee with a provincial breakdown of the specific resources, including vehicles, bullet-resistant vests, firearms, and clothing, which has been allocated to each province. Our ninth recommendation is that while we note concerns that many police stations, particularly those in rural areas, have insufficient vehicles to conduct their policing effectively, we recommend that SAPS ensures that sufficient vehicles are provided to all police stations provincially and that the distribution of vehicles takes account of the needs of rural and under-resourced police stations. Our 10th recommendation is that while we welcome the fact that the forensic laboratories are currently under the corporate renewal plan, we recommend that SAPS ensures that forensic services are extended to all districts, as this initiative will enhance crime investigation at a district level. Our 11th recommendation is that while members welcome the minister's announcement that crime stats would be released on a quarterly basis, we recommend that this be implemented speedily, as the quarterly release of crime stats will be invaluable to the committee in measuring the work of SAPS towards reducing crime. Our 12th recommendation, we recommend the urgent engagement and training with designated firearm officials to ensure that the renewal of firearm licenses are dealt with effectively. We further recommend that the department and the Civilian Secretariat for Police Services undertakes a review of the Firearms Control Amendment Bill to address the concerns related to the renewal of firearm licenses. And our final recommendation is that we recommend that SAPS prioritize the establishment of a dedicated unit to address illegal mining. And then all members, in terms of the conclusion and recommendations, the conclusion is that we support the budget vote 28, and this is contained on page 37. Honourable members, are there any additions you would want to make to these recommendations? Or do you think it comfortably covers our discussions and engagements with the Department of SAPS?
Chair.
Honourable Nita.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think it really covers our discussions with the department and also the recommendations that were made to the department. So I move for the approval, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Nita. Can I get a seconder, please?
Second.
Thank you, Honourable
Okay.
Nita. Are there any objections?
Chairperson.
Honourable Mikolakis.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. The Democratic Alliance notes the content of the report. However, we would like to, at this stage, reserve our right to vote on it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Honourable Mikolakis. That is noted. Are there any other abstentions? Okay, honourable members, we will consider the budget report of the Select Committee on Security and Justice on the 2020-21 Budget Vote 28 as adopted by the committee, and noting the DA's request. Members, if we can then move on to the next report, which is the report of the Select Committee on Security and Justice on the 2020-21 Budget Vote 21, APP of the Civilian Secretariat for Police, report dated 29th of May. Okay, members, in terms of this is a much shorter report. It is 13 pages long. Although we've added some annexures to this report, in essence, the report itself is 10 pages and it has some annexures. The annexures contain the Provincial Secretariat's Strategic Plan and APPs from page 10 to 13. In terms of the report, pages 1 to 2 cover the introduction, page 2 to 3 covers the strat plan, page 3 to 4 covers the budgets, page 4 covers the provincial APPs, and page 5 to 9 includes the discussion. In terms of our discussion with the department, we covered the aspects of the SAPS Inspectorate, the DNA Board, IPID and the CSP, transformed and accountable police services, the crime prevention strategy, DVA reporting, budget cuts and audits, community policing forums, the Firearms Amendment Bill, and the issue of the DPCI judge. Members, in terms of our recommendations, which are from pages 9 to 10, we have 8 recommendations. And just to follow the method we used in the previous report, I'm going to go through the recommendations. The first recommendation is that in respect of the budgets for provinces, there was a need for further engagement with the department so that we engage more deeply with the provincial secretariats on their budgets and activities. The second recommendation is that the DNA Board handover report, the DNA Board handover report be dealt with expeditiously, and that the process of finalizing a new board be sped up to ensure continuity in the work of the board. The third recommendation is that the CSP finalizes the necessary MOUs with IPID and the DPCI judge to ensure strengthened working relationships which will improve oversight over the police and the DPCI. Members recommended that the fourth recommendation, that the CSP conduct virtual consultations with the 3 spheres of government and SALGA to speed up and finalize the crime prevention strategy by December 2020. The fifth recommendation is that the department develop a comprehensive strategy which should be implemented in all police stations on a provincial level to enhance and improve the reporting of domestic violence incidents at police stations. Members encourage the CSP to be more proactive in addressing the challenges at police stations in respect of ensuring compliance with the Domestic Violence Act. The sixth recommendation is that the CSP urgently finalizes all outstanding MOUs with SALGA and COCTA to ensure that the CPFs are functional and operational, particularly during lockdown, as their input will be invaluable in assisting the police with the implementation of crime prevention strategies. The seventh recommendation is that the Office of the DPCI judge adheres to its mandate and ensures that it initiates and attends community engagements, which will in turn increase awareness in communities of the functions of the DPCI judge. And the final recommendation on members is that the CSP develops and implements working protocols with provincial secretariats to streamline the roles and functions clearly. And finally, the conclusion is on page 10 in support for the budget, that the committee supports budget vote 21. On members, are there any additions? Honourable members? Honourable members?
Chairperson,
Honourable Mola?
I move that the report to be adopted.
Thank you, Honourable Mola. Any seconder for the adoption of the report?
Ma'am,
Honourable
Chairperson?
Fayed? Yes.
Yes, I second.
Thank you, honourable members, for the report of the Select Committee on Budget Vote 21 is thus adopted. On members, the
Chairperson.
final. Oh yes, sorry. My
Similar to
apologies.
the previous.
Yes.
No, Chairperson. Similar to the previous report, we, as the DA, would like to reserve our right to vote on this. Thank you.
Okay. Reserving your right is noted, Honourable Mikalakis. Thank you, honourable members. As I said, the report is duly. I'm not sure who's speaking.
Isaac Seleku.
Honourable Seleku.
Now, the position that Mikalakis is expressing, I'm with that position as well.
No, I understood, Honourable Seleku.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I thought you
DA.
said an individual position.
Don't try your luck, when.
Who's speaking? Honourable Mikalakis, I understood you to say that it's the DA. Maybe
That is
just
correct.
clarify.
That is correct, Chairperson.
Okay, no, but I understood it as such, Honourable Seleku.
As long as you understand the chair, I'm happy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable members. Can we go to our final report? I know this process is very tedious on an electronic platform, but please bear with me. Honourable members, the final report is the report of the Select Committee on Security and Justice on the 2021 Budget Vote 24, APP of the Independent Police Investigative Directorate. Honourable members, in terms of this report, the IPA report is 14 pages in total, and it contains the following. On page 1 is the introduction. Pages 1 to 2 contains information in relation to the strat plan. Page 2 and 5 contains information in relation to the budget. And page 6 to 8 refers to the annual performance plans. The discussions are on pages 6 to 8. And the key areas that we engaged IPID with in the meeting included the IPID budget constraints in Program 2, budget reprioritization, the distinction between normal and COVID-19 cases, the reopening of satellite offices, the allocation of resources to the Free State Province, IPID's buildings or offices, the challenges in relation to outstanding cases, rape cases investigated by IPID, gender-based violence cases as well, the COSA judgment update, and the appointment of the executive director. In terms of recommendations of the committee, this is on page 12 to 14. Once again, we have 8 recommendations. The first recommendation is that while we emphasize the importance of the appointment of a permanent executive director for IPID, members recommended that the Minister of Police ensure that the appointment of a permanent executive director for IPID is made within 3 months. Members emphasized the importance of finding a fit and proper person for the position and recommended that the timelines should not compromise the quality of the recommended individual to the post of executive director of IPID. Our second recommendation is that the oversight visits should be undertaken to police colleges and detective colleges to understand what types of training they are receiving and to ensure that they are recruiting police officers who are committed to being police officers. Our third recommendation is that IPID develops a strategy to compile information regarding the behavior of police officers, resulting from their investigations, and that this information should be shared with SAPS towards improving police officers' compliance with the Code of Conduct. Our fourth recommendation is that continuous awareness training sessions should be held with police officers in police stations to strengthen compliance with applicable legislation and regulations and reduce the number of cases reported for deaths as a result of police action and or while in police custody, rape by a police officer and or while in police custody, and systemic corruption. Our fourth recommendation is that while we noted that IPID's communication, particularly with the media in relation to its cases and the investigation, was very poor, and this resulted and as a result of this, we recommended that IPID improves its communication and response to media reports regarding cases under investigation. Our sixth recommendation is that IPID adhere to holding monthly meetings with the CSP, NPA, and the SAPS to review monthly statistics in relation to the implementation of disciplinary recommendations forwarded to the SAPS and cases referred to the NPA for prosecution. Our seventh recommendation is that the committee receives an update and report on the IPID's implementation of the Khoza Court judgment, the Miggles investigation, and the investigation into the Vicksburg journalists. Our final recommendation is that while we acknowledge the financial challenges faced by IPID, we recommend that despite these challenges, IPID should find proactive mechanisms to ensure that all cases are investigated effectively. Further, due to the insufficient funding and the proposed expansion strategy, considered efforts should be made to ensure that the appropriate funds are made available for IPID to function effectively. In conclusion, honourable members, the committee supports Budget Vote 24, which is on page 14. Honourable members, if you can give me an indication if you have any additions or if you would want to move for the adoption of the report.
Chairperson.
Okay, I see Honourable Mtetwa, Honourable Mkalakis. I don't know if there's any other hand. Honourable Mola.
Dodovu.
Okay. Honourable Dodovu. Okay, can I start with Mtetwa, Mkalakis, followed by Mola, and then Dodovu? Honourable Mtetwa?
No, thank you, Chair. I think mine is that we have said that the appointment of the executive director in the IPID, we are giving them 3 months to do that. But I think, Chair, we must also take into consideration the issue of the COVID-19, because 3 months from when? Is it 3 months from today after adopting the report? Or I think we must be really more specific when it comes to that. Also taking into account that there is a court judgment in this in respect of this matter. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, Honourable Mkalakis.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, my question is with regards to the last sentence of the report. We had the same issue last year as well, that when we receive the budget briefing from the department, we express across party lines our concern about the underfunding of IPID that effectively renders it in a state to function below its ideal capacity. We agree also across party lines that for IPID to rid the police of criminal elements within the police, they need to be properly funded. And this is a wonderful thing that we can agree upon this. But then at the end of the report every year, it indicates that we, contrary to our objections and our concerns, it indicates that we support the budget, although in the deliberations, it is very clear that none of us actually really think that IPID is properly funded. So I just find it a bit contradictory that we are concerned. We don't agree with the fact that IPID is underfunded, but yet the report reflects that we support it. I find it a bit contradictory, and I would just like to have some clarity on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mola.
Chairperson, I'm covered by Honorable Mtetwa, but from which month the appointment of the IP head? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mola. Honorable Dodovu.
Chair, just some few issues. Firstly, I think, unless I'm corrected, I think that the effective date of the 3 months will be when it will be after Parliament has adopted the report that we will present before the House, and that is when the 3 months period will kick in. Just some few issues about the IPID. I think we all agree that the role that is played by IPID is very much indispensable, and we all support that. And I do support the recommendation that the IPID must work within its limited means, whilst we acknowledge that it is underfunding. And I think you capture it quite well that we take appreciation of the fact that there is COVID-19. This COVID-19 has led to a situation whereby almost all the departments, provinces, and everybody across the board has had the budget cuts in relation to this predicament that we are facing, and we acknowledge that. And my view is that we must never create any impression that we don't support the work of the IPID, that we don't want to see it sufficiently funded so that it executes its mandate. We saying that, but we must appreciate the fact that we are constrained by the practical realities that we are facing, and therefore we must support the view, because we need to demystify this notion that we are contradicting ourselves, and we are saying that we don't want to see an effective IPID that discharges its own objective, that is the watchdog for the police service. My view is that, based on what you presented as the recommendations before this meeting, we must adopt the report as a true reflection and as a way forward to attend to the issues of the IPID. The last point that I want to make is in relation to the time frame. I think, as we are all aware, this amendment to the legislation of the IPID was occasioned by the constitutional judgment. We said that this must be expedited, and my view is that whatever that we do, we must make sure that we comply with the order by the Constitutional Court, that we are within the time frame that was allocated to us as Parliament to adopt a legislation that is not unlawful. In that respect, I'm suggesting that you need to check with the office of the chair as to when is the cut-off date in terms of the expectation of the Constitutional Court, and therefore the House must sit before that to adopt this particular report so that we are constitutionally compliant. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Dodovu and all other honorable members. I think, Honorable Mtetwa, in terms of your question, I think Honorable Dodovu had covered that. But I think, Honorable Mtetwa, you also recall that the department, it was required that the department fill the position of the executive director by February 2020. This is a matter that the Portfolio Committee on Police has been following up with the department. And the 3 months actually emanated as a decision of the committee when we engaged with the department. It's a decision of the joint committee. But in essence, I think Honorable Dodovu has explained when the time frame. When does it actually kick in, the 3 months? And then I think Honorable Mikalakis, in terms of what you raise, it's not a contradiction because obviously our understanding is that, and as you've said, that across all party lines, we agree that the budget is insufficient for IPID to operate effectively and efficiently, but it does allow them to operate to some extent. And for us not to approve the budget would actually imply that we're not approving any funds to be directed to IPID. As little as it is, I mean, we would continue our role. And I think that the recommendation that we made, the last recommendation, around the issue of the IPID expansion strategy, which the understanding was is being presented to Treasury, and possibly looking in, ensuring that SAPS looks into trying to ensure that this strategy appropriate funds are made available for IPID to function effectively. So in essence, and then I think Honorable Dodovu, those other issues that you raised are fairly covered in the recommendations. The issue in relation to the IPID Amendment Act bill, I think this matter is also covered in the report, although I see it's not reflected in the recommendation, and perhaps we should maybe add one other recommendation in relation to the IPID Amendment bill. Honourable members, if you are okay with that addition, which we will add to the report. Do you have any other comments to make, or can we adopt the report with that addition to the report in relation to the IPID Amendment bill?
No, Chair, I was not complaining about the timeline, but I was just saying that we must look at the practicalities. Yes, Comrade Dodove has answered me very well. And also reminding the committee around the issue of the court judgment on this matter. Actually, it's long overdue, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Mtetwa. Honourable members, with that amendment, can we move for the adoption of the report?
I move, Chair, with the amendment.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Second, Chairperson by Mola.
Thank you, Honourable Mola. And then Honourable Mikalakis.
Same as the other two reports, the Democratic Alliance would like to reserve our right to vote at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, honourable members. The report of the Select Committee on Security and Justice on the 2020-21 Budget Vote 24, APP of the Independent Police Investigative Directorate is hereby adopted. Honourable members, thank you for bearing with me through this process. I know it is a little tedious, especially on an electronic platform when we deal with very lengthy reports, but we still have other lengthy reports coming our way. So I guess practice makes perfect. But honourable members, thank you very much for your participation. And we intend having a meeting next week, Wednesday, which members will be informed accordingly. Let me thank, I think the minister has left us already, but I thank you, and let me then declare this meeting closed. Thank you very much, honourable members.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Dodovu, Honourable Mola.